when you get that official diagnosis and you go down the process, you notice things more. And obviously with me, my whole world changes in the fact that I was working in car sales at the time. And when I told my employer that I was being declared severely sight impaired or legally blind, they let me go. They let me, I lost my job because I couldn't do test drives and do that big part of car sales anymore. And they let me go, and I found myself unemployed, and I applied to get help through the support system because I'm quite an optimist. I always thought that, I'm not the only one that's been through this. There's been loads of people that have been through this. So surely there's got to be a system in place for people like us. This is what I was saying to my wife at the time. Surely there's got to be a system in place for people like us. It's nothing to worry about. We'll make some phone calls. We'll get this sorted. We'll be okay. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. The system that we had at the time in the UK, in order to kind of get financial support, there was an 9-month waiting list of the process of being able to receive a first payment, of being actually going through the system and being assessed that you actually, were needing or at the right level to receive these kind of payments, and you were being assessed by people who didn't know anything about the condition. Which is crazy, really, because really when you get that certification from a retinal specialist, you'd think that would be enough, but no. So those first 8 or 9 months were really, really tough. We had to feed our kids on food parcels. I lost my job. I was struggling with anxiety and depression because not just because of the sight that I was losing, but also the financial pressure I was putting on my young family. I had 2 stepsons. I have a daughter in Scotland from a previous relationship. My wife and she was my fiancée then, Amy. We had Austin, who was young. We couldn't afford the rent in the house we were staying in. We were saving to get married. Everything kind of fell apart, and we were really struggling for a while. And it was tough times, but it was speaking to other people like yourself and jumping online that actually kind of was the start of me turning things around to kind of where I am now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you were diagnosed and you were just hit with this whole life's change. Your job is, you get let go, which isn't even really legal, is it?
No, it was funny. The way they went about it was quite kind of sly. What they did was I think the general manager let me go.
Yeah.
And then like a week later, I got a phone call from someone in the HR department, and they invited me in and they offered me a role. But it was a role that was temporary, and it was a role that was never, ever going to work out. It was kind of like a place that made up for me, doing a job that was never, ever going to actually work out.
Yeah.
To kind of tick a box. So I knew what they were up to. So I initially kind of, once that had kind of happened, I then started applying for positions that I could normally do standing on my head. And every time I got on the phone with someone and I mentioned about my low vision, that was the end of the conversation. Phones would get put down. It was crazy.
Wow.
So I even actually, this is how crazy it was in those early days. And I remember having this experience I'm about to tell you about and actually being in floods of tears afterwards because I was so frustrated. I went for an interview with a very well-known, I'm not going to mention any names, but a very well-known sight loss charity here in the UK for a position called an eye clinic liaison officer. And an eye clinic liaison officer is someone who speaks to people who have been newly diagnosed and helps them get the support that they need, helps them make the links to things like employment support, benefit support, well-being and mental health support, anything that they need to kind of get them through the process. And when I got interviewed, I got to like the final interview. I had a couple of interviews and they loved me and got to the final stage, and then they turned around and said to me, "Oh, we don't feel like you're in a position to support other people." And I was like, how can you say that about, you don't know me, you don't know what I'm made of.
Yeah.
And I think I've actually proved that with everything I've done in the future, that actually I can support a lot of people. So, but, I needed to go through this process, I think, to get me to where I am now and, all the things that I've done since. and it's yeah, I think, you know, it's our scars and the tough things and the dark days that we go through that actually give us the strength and armor to face the things that we get to face going forward.
I agree, definitely. And that's always what I find the most, what pumps me up the most when I talk to people on this podcast is hearing them go from point A to point B, have this like character arc of, you know, it's kind of like there's a before you're diagnosed, and then there's a diagnosis, and then there's this down period where you're learning about yourself and you're just experiencing all these new emotions and you're trying to accept it. And then there's a period of acceptance, and then you start embracing it, your disability. And then once you start embracing, you know, your disability is when you're like, that's when things start actually working for you.